Welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today, let's talk about an identity issue. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. I appreciate you joining me today or this evening or this morning, whenever it is that you are listening to this. Hey, I wanted to talk a little bit about today this concept of our identity. Now, this is a little bit different from what I would say is our character, although certainly your character contributes to your identity. But when we think of this concept of this personal identity, how I see myself, how I want other people to see me, your identity, it goes a little bit beyond just your character, because there are all kinds of other things that contribute to this. Certainly, other people's perception of you contributes to your own identity, and as well as your own, insecurities, your own confidence, all those types of things. But specifically, I want to relate that authority is always an identity issue. Now, what I mean by that is, and you may have heard this before, because it's certainly not a new concept by any stretch, as is most things with leadership are not new concepts. We just keep relearning the hard lessons that have been forgotten through the sands of time. But authority is always an identity issue, because where does authority come from? Typically, it comes from the position that you're in. It comes from some authority has been lent to you by the overall corporation, the overall group, whether it be, a small group of people have lent you that authority by virtue of your position being the head of that position or the head of that group. And certainly within, military ranks, that's how commanders get command, is they are lent that command and that authority by the position that they hold, by virtue of them being a certain rank and then holding certain positions in that military structure, whether it be a platoon commander, battalion, Air Force wing, Navy, whatever Navy calls themselves. Sorry, I don't know that for the Navy folks out there. But they are lent that authority. The interesting thing is, that starts to become an identity for them, because instead of it just being a position, and you can certainly have this in other aspects of area, you may be a car salesman, and then over time that becomes your identity. Like you start introducing yourself like, hi, I'm Kale, I sell cars. And that becomes part of your identity, which is just fascinating in and of itself, because there are other, jobs that you don't go around saying, hi, I'm Kale, I, dig ditches. Like, hi, I'm Kale, I sweep floors or anything. It's not necessarily part of your identity, because there's a little bit of negative connotation to it, or at least not a connotation of like achievement and things like that. Does that make sense? But authority absolutely has a connotation of achievement, of status, because it means you're in charge of something or someone, or a bunch of somethings and a bunch of someones. And it starts to become a part of your identity. What's interesting about this is that it gives you, whether slowly or quickly, and I've seen it on both ends. I've seen it change people like quickly, like, day one, I'm in charge. And they take that authority and they make it part of their identity, and how they walk, how they talk to people, how they look at people, how everything, their mannerisms completely change when they get that authority and it becomes part of them, and they get that I'm in charge attitude. And that's kind of what I'm leaning towards today in this discussion of the people that have taken it to the extreme of probably not the best form of leadership, not the best form of how to use that authority that's been imparted to you. Because what's interesting is authority almost never is a natural occurrence. Does that make sense? So authority that you have, your ability to enforce laws, enforce punishments, enforce your will on other people, the authority that you have is almost never done naturally. It's almost always imparted to you by someone else or some other organization, or, in the case of like a police officer or a politician, by the actual law that has been passed and abided by. But it's fascinating how, as individuals, once we get that authority, it becomes our identity. Like it's manifested through us and just the sheer force of our will and our personalities and our brains and how smart we are and all the experiences we have and things that we can do. But it's so fascinating how we lose sight of the only reason you have that authority is because you were hired into that position. Because you took an oath to defend the Constitution, because I don't know what oaths police officers take, in order to protect to serve and protect their communities. I'm sure they have a very similar thing, but it's been imparted to you by virtue of that organization. I don't know how many times I can say that. But the fascinating thing is this can easily, and I've seen it many times, that authority, when it becomes your identity, it can easily lead to insecurity. Why? Why can authority, when you're in charge, you're the honcho, you're the jefe, why can it lead to insecurity? Well, what's fascinating is you start identifying your authority and the power that you have by virtue of that authority with your character. So instead of the reverse flow of your character becomes, your leadership skills and abilities and qualities and what attracts people to you, it becomes kind of almost a reverse flow of that authority is what imparts your soul leadership abilities, skills, and what attracts or doesn't attract people to you. And we start becoming insecure with that, especially if people start responding negatively to you. If they're not, maybe before you gain that position, you were one of the bros, you were hanging out in the after work and doing the social hour thing or whatever it is that looks like for your organization. But then once you gain that position, that, whether it be sales manager or legitimately, vice president or moved up CEO, those types of positions where you gain that authority legitimately and you're no longer one of the people. And because of that, your attitudes change, your mannerisms change, and certainly what you do with your time and how you spend it and who you spend it with changes. Now, people don't respond to you as positively as they did in the past. And the issue with that is we take that personally, as we do. But the problem is you've identified yourself. You now start to become, I am Kale the boss. I'm Kale the CEO. I run this place, I'm in charge, and now because people are, whispering behind your back, they're giving you kind of dirty looks, whatever, those cold shoulders, those little subtle ways, and maybe some other people are just telling you flat out, and they're not responding positively to your authority, and you take that personally, it creates that insecurity because that authority has become part of your identity. But that absolutely may be true. You may have earned that. You may have deserved that cold shoulders. You may deserve those changes in attitudes by virtue of you are now in charge and how you are taking that. And I would strongly encourage you, if you are in that position, and this happens a lot with people that rise up through the ranks. Again, they started out, there are many examples of super successful people that started out as the dishwasher. They started out as the cashier in the store. They started out, stock boy, whatever it is, and they moved up the ranks. And it's interesting to see that some of them weighted those, I guess you could kind of call them politics. Certainly in the military, there's some politics that happen with as you gain in rank. But as you rise through those ranks, like how do you not create your soul identity in this new authority that you're getting in each step as you're rising in stature and responsibility and promotions throughout your company? Versus those that absolutely just go insane, like I only want to ever be a general because then I will be in charge and people will have to do what I say and it'll be my way. Usually that comes out of some other insecurities that they've experienced in the past of having to do what other people say and they don't like it, or feeling humiliated by some other order, or all kinds of other things. I won't go into the deep psychology aspects of what makes people do the things they do. But I would very, very, very strongly encourage you, if you are somebody that is in a position of authority right now, if you are somebody that holds that rank, that has done the things and has been imparted the ability to punish, the ability to reward, like legitimately, like, with promotions, with finances, with, the law, if you're, a police officer or somebody listening to this, I would highly encourage you to try your absolute best to disassociate your identity with that authority. to make them two separate things, because you can wield authority. You can be the one that makes that final decision of, yes, you did this wrong, we're going to have to dock your paycheck, or you weren't doing your job correctly, so you're going to be demoted. Or on the flip side, like, hey man, you've been absolutely rocking it this last quarter. Here's this promotion, here's this raise, here's this bonus. Like that ability to impart that authority, or, hey, we're changing the schedule to meet the needs of our customers. I know it's, not convenient for everybody here at the workplace, but I'm the boss and we've got to do this in order for these reasons, versus somebody that has changed and they will just come down and lay the law with no explanations, all those types of things. We've talked about that in the past. But I would highly encourage you, if you are somebody in that position, disassociate your identity. Stop being Kale the boss, Kale the jefe, Kale the authoritarian, and just be Kale the leader. That's the whole point of this podcast, is to try to convince you, to try to give you the tools and the techniques and the experiences that you can learn from in the stories that I tell as a better way to lead your people to where you are not just the boss, that you do not have to solely rely on the authority of the position that you've been given by virtue of being the business owner, or virtue of, the larger corporation making you the department head. Because that is such a lazy and just honestly piss poor way to lead that almost nobody responds to. And the only people that respond to that are ones that ultimately want your position, because they want that power and they want that authority. And they'll just kind of go through the motions until your time is over and they can step into that position. Does that make sense? But the ones that are truly good, the ones that are there really to serve your company, to serve your customers, to serve their country, those are the ones that ultimately will be turned off, and they'll realize that this organization is not for them, and they'll walk away, or they'll move on to other things where they're more valued instead of being run by a boss. Make sense? Cool. So remember, identity issue. Authority is always an identity issue. The question becomes what kind of identity are you making it? Is it something that's just to you a position, that's something that you do, that you have responsibility for to wield, and you've been given that responsibility? Or is it something that at that core, that's who you are? It's what validates you. It's what gets you up in the morning, that chance to be in charge and take command. Or are you that leader that people want to actually follow because you deserve to be followed, and you're compassionate, and you're willing to listen to other people, and you're willing to help other people grow and meet their goals? Be that one. All right, everybody. Have a fantastic afternoon no matter where you are at in the world. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.